Many people look at Victorian dating through romantic eyes. They think of boots-de-laine glances across ballrooms, passionate love letters, and gentlemen in top hats proposing on bended knee. Nothing could be further from the truth. For most people, Victorian courtship was a terrifying obstacle course of bizarre, awkward interactions, and social landmines that could blow up your entire future. Dating wasn't about finding your soulmate. It was about not accidentally getting engaged to someone you barely knew because you mishandled a handkerchief. So yeah, if these stories work for you, subscribe. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Comment below. Last week, someone from Canada said they listened during lunch breaks. Not judging, just wasn't expecting that. We're heading to Victorian England in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second, adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. Alright? Your eyes flutter open in London. 1875. First thing that hits you is the weight. There's something heavy pressing down on your ribs, squeezing your waist like you're being slowly crushed by a python. You take a shallow breath. That's all you can manage. And realize you've woken up in a corset. Not just any corset. Butone cinched so tight, you can feel your organs rearranging themselves to make room. And someone's yanking it tighter. Miss Elenina, please hold still. We must have you looking perfect today. That's your lady's maid, Agnes, currently attempting to compress your waist to the fashionable 18. You're 21 years old. It's your third season in London, and if you don't secure a husband soon, you'll be well on your way to spinsterhood. Unlike your comfy bed back in 2025, you're perched on the edge of a wooden chair in your dressing room, gripping the sides as Agnes performs what can only be described as socially acceptable torture in the name of beauty. Your mother insists you look your absolute best today, Agnes continues, giving the laces another brutal tug. Lady Harrington's tea is very important. I hear Mr. Blackwood will be in attendance. You stifle a groan. Mr. Blackwood, the latest in your mother's parade of suitable matches, wealthy, from a good family, and about as interesting as watching paint dry, but he's eligible. And in Victorian England that trumps personality every time. I spent way too long researching Victorian matchmaking for this story, like concerningly long. And let me tell you, dating apps might be a hellscape, but they're nothing compared to the Victorian marriage market. I'm not exaggerating when I say that courtship in the 1800s was basically a real-life game of chess, where one wrong move could ruin your entire life. Agnes, you whisper. Must a corset be so tight, he could hardly breathe at Lady Pembroke's ball. Last week, your mother says a gentleman doesn't want a wife who eats more than a bird. Agnes replies, not easing up one bit. Now let's get you into your dress. The dress, a pale blue morning dress with enough layers to clothe a small village. The wire cage crinoline underneath keeps the skirt extended in a perfect bell shape. It looks elegant, but feels like you're wearing a prison. You can't sit properly, can't move quickly, can't even go to the bathroom without a major operation. Not that a proper Victorian lady would ever admit to having bodily functions. Dating in Victorian times wasn't just about finding someone you liked. It was about securing your entire future. For women especially, marriage was essentially their career. A bad match could mean a lifetime of misery with no escape. Divorce was nearly impossible, incredibly scandalous, and usually left women destitute. So the stakes were impossibly high. Your mother has been up since dawn, Agnes says, arranging your hair. She's determined to see you engaged before the season ends. You know what she's not saying. Your younger sister is waiting her turn to be introduced to society, and having married daughters doing the rounds at the same time would be both expensive and slightly embarrassing. You're taking up space in the marriage market. Time to move inventory. Okay? Picture this. The Victorian marriage market, literally called the season. It ran from April to August when Parliament was in session. Aristocratic and upper middle Families would pack up from their country estates and head to London for months of strategically planned social events. The entire purpose throwing young women and men together in carefully supervised settings so they could find suitable matches. Ms. Ella Lenina, your mother wants to review your dance card before we leave, Agnes says, pinning the final strands of your hair into place. The dance card, a little booklet attached to your wrist by a ribbon, where gentlemen would pencil in which dances they'd reserved with you. A full dance card meant you were popular. An empty one meant you were failing miserably. Dating by way of public performance and immediate visible judgment. Fun. Agnes, what if I didn't want to marry Mr. Blackwood or any of Mother's choices? Agnes looks at Ulick. You've suggested flying to the moon. Miss Elenina, she says quietly, what choice do you have? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because in Victorian England, particularly for women, choice wasn't really part of the equation. The goal was marriage, preferably advantageous marriage, and the entire society was structured around making that happen. Now, let's talk about the coming out process, which has nothing to do with sexuality and everything to do with announcing. Hello world, I am officially on the marriage market for upper-class girls. This meant buying presented at court, literally curtsying before the queen to signal your debutante society. It was essentially a royal stamp of approval saying, this one's ready for breeding. Slightly less posh families would announce their daughter's eligibility through local balls and dinner parties. Your coming out had been 3 years ago. You remember standing in a line of nervous girls in white dresses with feathers in their hair, waiting to curtsy before Queen Victoria herself. One girl actually fainted. Nobody helped her until after her presentation was complete. Priorities. There, Agnes says, stepping back to admire her work. You look beautiful, Miss Elenina. You stare at yourself in the mirror. You do look beautiful in the Victorian sense. Pale skin, achieve it through staying indoors, and for some women, a little lead-based face powder, tightly corseted waist, elaboratella-styled hair. You're a perfect product, packaged and ready for market. When you head downstairs, your mother is the drawing room, already dressed in her visiting clothes. She looks you up and down with the critical eye of a livestock judge at a county fair. Elenina dear, turn around. You do a slow spin, and she nods approvingly. The blue brings out your eyes. Mr. Blackwood mentioned he favors blue. Of course, he did. And of course, she remembered. Your mother has been collecting information eligible bachelors like she's building dossier for the Secret Service. Mother, you begin carefully. I was thinking perhaps I might spend some time in the library today instead. Don't be ridiculous. She cuts you off. Lady Harrington has specificalia rang for several eligible gentlemen to be present. It would be most impolite to decline. Translation. Get in the carriage. We're going husband hunting. The carriage ride to Lady Harrington's is uncomfortable, both because of your corset and the lecture your mother delivers on proper tea etiquette. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't laugh too loudly. Don't eat too much. Don't drink too much tea. Don't sit too close to a gentleman. But also, don't be standoffish. It's like trying to navigate a labyrinth blindfolded. And remember, your mother says as the carriage pulls up to the impressive townhouse. Mr. Blackwood is heir to a considerable fortune. His family owns property in both Kent and Yorkshire. You nod dutifully. Property in Kent and Yorkshire. How thrilling, how romantic. The footman helps you down from the carriage, and you follow your mother up the steps to Lady Harrington's home. Inside the drawing room is already filled with people, mostly women, in elegant dresses with a strategic sprinkling of eligible bachelors. The men look as uncomfortable as the women look determined. It's a battlefield disguised as a tea party. Mrs. Pembroke, Miss Pembroke, how delightful. Lady Harrington swoops down upon you, air-kissing your mother, and examining you with sharp eyes. Ella Lenina, my dear, you look positively blooming. Come, There are several people you simply must meet. And so it begins. You're paraded around the room like a prize here, introduced to a series of gentlemen who all blur together in a sea of side whiskers and polite bows. You make the same small talk about the weather, the season, the latest performance at that heater, careful to seem intelligent enough to not be dull, but not so intelligent as to be threatening. Let me tell you about the Victorian rules for conversation between unmarried men and women, because they're gloriously, hilariously specific. First, a proper young lady couldn't just start chatting with a man she didn't know. She had to be formally introduced by him. Even after an introduction, physical contact was strictly limited. No touching, definitely no hugging. A gloved hand might be offered for the briefest of handshakes or to be escorted into dinner. Miss Pembroke. A deep voice breaks into your thoughts, and you turn to see a tall man with dark hair and impressively bushy sideburns bowing slightly. I believe we met at Lady Westmullen's ball last month. Henry Blackwood at your service. So, this is this famous Mr. Blackwood. You curtsy in response, noting that he is at least better looking than your mother had led you to believe. Not that it matters. His personality could still be as dry as last week's toast. Mr. Blackwood, you respond, how lovely to see you again. I trust you are enjoying the season thus far, he asks, and you launch into the expected script of polite conversation. The thing about Victorian dating is that it was almost impossible to get to know someone properly before marriage. All your interactions were supervised. All your conversations were limited to approved topics. Even your letters could read by parents or guardians. You were basically expected to decide if you wanted to spend your entire life with someone based on how well they made. Small talk about the weather and whether they could dance a proper quadrille. Would you care to take a turn about the room? Mr. Blackwood asks, offering his arm in a perfectly proper manner. You nod and place your hand lightly on his arm, careful to maintain the appropriate distance between your bodies, close enough to converse, far enough to prevent any improper contact. Your mother, you notice, is watching like a hawk from across the room, a satisfied smile on her face. I understand you enjoy reading, Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood says as you stroll slowly around the perimeter of the room. May I ask what authors you prefer? You hesitate. This is a trap. If you name something too intellectual, you risk seeming blue-stoking-ish, a term for overly educated women who were considered unmarriageable. If you name something too frivolous, you risk seeming empty-headed. Better to aim for the middle ground. I enjoy Jane Austen, you reply, which is both true and safe, and some poetry. Excellent taste. He nods approvingly. He himself enjoys Sir Walter Scott and Wordsworth, and thus begins the delicate dance of trying to gauge compatibility through the most constrained conversation imaginable. It's like trying to assess someone's entire personality by watching them select produce at a grocery store. Good luck with that. May I be so bold as to request the honor of calling on you tomorrow afternoon? Mr. Blackwood asks, as your circuit of the room nears completion. This is significant. A gentleman requesting to call means he wants to visit you at home. Still chaperoned, of course, which indicates tertiary interest. Your mother will be ecstatic. I would be delighted, your spend, because what else can you say? The rest of the tea passes in a blur, of cucumber sandwiches, lukewarm tea, and stilted conversation. By the time you and your mother return home, your face hurts from maintaining a pleasant expression, and your ribs are screaming for release from the corset. Mr. Blackwood was quite attentive, your mother says, practically glowing with satisfaction. And he's requested to call tomorrow. I knew the blue dress was the right choice. Yes, mother. It was definitely the blue dress that sealed the deal, not the substantial dowry you'll bring to the marriage, or the advantageous connection between our families. He seems nice, Euphor, which is about as enthusiastic as you can manage. Nice, my dear. He's perfect. Excellent family, substantial means, and still under 30. You couldn't ask for a better match. You couldn't ask for much of anything in Victorian dating. That was kind of the point. Here's the wild thing about Victorian courtship. The rules were so rigid, so formalized that people had to develop elaborate workarounds just to communicate basic human feelings, because you couldn't just say, "Hey, I like you," or, "Actually, I think you're boring as wallpaper paste." Instead, you had entire silent languages. The way you held your fan, how you wore your gloves, where you placed your calling card, all to try to convey messages that you weren't Speak aloud. "Agnes, please help me out of this dress," you say. Once you're back in your room, "I can hardly breathe." As Agnes unlaces your corset, you take your first deep breath in hours. The relief is immediate and intense, like finaligating into your comfy clothes after a day in uncomfortable business where Buddha 1,000 times more extreme. "Mr. Blackwood seemed quite taken with you," Agnes comments as she hangs up your dress. Your mother believes he might propose before the season's end. The thought sends a chill through you. Marriage to Mr. Blackwood, a man you've spoken to for perhaps a total of 30 minutes, always under supervision, a man whose true character, interests, temperament, and habits you know absolutely nothing about. Yet you're expected to entrust your entire future to him. That night, as you lie in your bed, a four-poster with heavy curtains that can be drawn for warmth and privacy, you stare up at the canopy and consider your options. They are unfortunately limited. You could refuse Mr. Blackwood if he proposes, but that would mean continuing on the marriage market, enduring more seasons, more teas, more awkward conversations with strange men. Your parents would be disappointed, possibly angry. Society would begin to wonder what was wrong with you. Or you could accept securing your future, but tying yourself for Verto, a man you barely know. There was a darkness to Victorian dating that romantic novels don't show you. People made desperate choices because the alternatives were worse. Women especially had few options outside of marriage. No real career prospects, limited education, and often no independent income. Is it any wonder that Victorian literature is filled with disastrous marriages? They were basically playing relationship roulette with the highest possible stakes. The next day, Mr. Blackwood calls at exactly the appropriate hour, not too early to seem eager, not too late to seem disrespectful. He's shown into the drawing room where you wait with your mother, who has strategically arranged herself at the far end of the room, close enough to chaperone, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. "Miss Pembroke," he bows, "you look lovely today." "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." You curtsy in return. "Won't you sit down?" Takes a seat across from you, maintaining a proper distance. Your mother pretends to be engrossed in her embroidery, but is clearly listening to every word. "I trust you're well," he asks. "Very well, thank you," you reply. "And yourself?" "Quite well." An awkward silence falls. This is the problem with Victorian dating small talk. There are only so many polite nothings you can exchange before you run out of approved topics. "I was wondering," Mr. Blackwood says, finally, "if you and your mother might do me the honor of accompanying me to the botanical gardens tomorrow." Thewither promises to be fair. A public outing, another step in the courtship progression. Your mother looks up from her embroidery, beaming. "We would be delighted," she answers before you can speak. "Wouldn't we, Elanina?" "Yes," you say, because again, what choice do you have? That sounds lovely. Mr. Blackwood stays for exactly the appropriate amount of time, not so short as to be rude, not so long as to be presumptuous, before taking his leave with another bow and a promise to call for you at 2 o'clock tomorrow. As soon as is gone, your mother is by your side, practically vibrating with excitement. "A walk in the gardens, my dear. He's clearly smitten. I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks to your father within the month." "Mother, I've barely spoken to him," you protest. "I hardly know him at all." She pats your hand condescendingly. You'll have a lifetime to get acquainted after you're married. The important thing is that he's respectable, well off, and from a good family. The rest will follow. The Victorian approach to marriage compatibility was wildly different from ours. Today, we worry about emotional connection, shared values, and whether someone's Netflix preferences are compatible with ours. Back then, it was all about social standing, financial security, and family connections. Actual personal compatibility was considered a nice bonus if it happened, but certainly not a requirement. That night, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your distracted expression. "Troubled thoughts, Miss Elena?" she asks, brushing out your hair. "Agnes, do you think it's possible to marry for love in our world, or is it always just a business arrangement?" Agnes's hands paused briefly before resuming their work. "I think she says carefully that love can grow where it's planted, but the soil must be right first." Translation: sure. You might eventually fall in love with Mr. Blackwood, but first make sure he's not going to leave you penniless or treat you badly. You climb into bed, your mind still spinning with thoughts of tomorrow's outing and what it might mean for your future. The mattress is stuffed with horsehair, the luxury option in Victorian times, and the sheets are fine linen. But despite these comforts, sleep feels distant. In the quiet darkness of your bedroom, you wonder what Mr. Blackwood is thinking. Is he lying awake, contemplating a future with you, or is he simply checking off boxes on his list of requirements for a suitable wife? Does he care about your thoughts, your dreams, your desires, or just your dodgy and family connections? You'll likely never know. That's the tragedy of Victorian dating. Two people making life-altering decisions based on the barest acquaintance, both wearing masks of propriety that hide their true selves. It's a system designed to create matches, not happiness. As you finally drift towards sleep, your last thought is of tomorrow's garden walk and what new steps in this elaborate courtship dance it might bring. The rules are clear, the expectations set. All that remains is to play your part in this carefully choreographed performance and hope that when the music stops, you find yourself in a partnership you can endure. If not, enjoy. Your body sinks deeper into your modern mattress as you think about how different dating is today compared to Victorian times. How lucky we are to be able to actually get to know some we adore, committing our lives to them. How fortunate to have choices, independence, and the freedom to express our feelings directly instead of through elaborate codes and signals. The Victorian marriage market was brutal, but it was just getting started. The real challenges came in the actual courting process, where one misstep could ruin everything. The languages of fans, handkerchiefs and flowers, the rigid visiting hours, the chaperoned walks. The battle to find moments of genuine connection in a system designed to prevent exactly that. And all of it in corsets so tight you could barely breathe. Makes swiping left seem pretty easy by comparison, doesn't it? The morning of your garden outing dawns bright and clear. Your stomach is in knots, not from excitement, but from the sheer weight of expectations. Yesterday, your mother spent 3 hours coaching you on proper garden walking etiquette, as if strolling through flowers requires specialized training. "Agnes," you whisper, as she tightens your corset for the day. "What if I trip and fall into a rose bush?" Mother would never recover from the shame. Agnes snorts, then quickly composes herself. "Miss Elena, just remember to keep apropos distance from Mr. Blackwood, and for heaven's sake, don't touch anything without your gloves." Ah, yes, they gloves. In Victorian England, bare hands were practically considered obscene. A proper lady never ever went outdoors with naked hands. The physical barrier of fabric between your skin and the world was just one more way to maintain that precious proper distance between yourself and potential suitors. As Agnes helps you into your walking dress, a slightly less formal outfit that still requires a corset, petticoats, and enough fabric to upholster a sofa. You notice her slipping something into your small handbag. "What's that?" you ask? Your fan, Agnes says with a meaningful look. The ivory one with the painted birds. Of course, your fan. That seemingly innocent accessory that's actually the Victorian woman's secret weapon. I found this amazing book at a museum gift shop once that translated the Victorian language of the fan, and holy crap, it was basically Morse code with wrist flicks. Museum guides will tell you that women used these signals to communicate secretly with potential suitors across crowded rooms, all while looking perfectly proper. Remember what I taught you, Agnes murmurs as she arranges your hair. The fan is your voice when your lips must remain silent. Agnes had been the one to teach you the secret language of the fan. Knowledge pissed down from lady's maid to lady's maid. A covert communication system developed by women who had no other way to express their true feelings in public. Drawing it across your cheek means, Agnes quizzes you. I love you. You respond automatically, twirling in their right hand. I wish to be rid of you, resting it on your right cheek. Yes, that left cheek. No. Agnes nods approvingly. Good, use it wisely. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here you are, a grown woman having to resort to elaborate fan movements just to say yes or no to a man. But that was Victorian dating for you. All about indirect immunization, hidden messages, and plausible deniability. When the maid announces Mr. Blackwood Serval, at precisely 2 o'clock, you and your mother descend the stairs with practice headrest. He stands in the foyer, top hat in hand, looking every inch the proper Victorian gentleman. Mrs. Pembroke, Miss Pembroke, he bows. I've brought the carriage. Shall we? The carriage ride to the botanical gardens is silent and awkward, with your mother sitting between you and Mr. Blackwood like a human chastity belt. When you arrive, Mr. Blackwood helps first your mother, then you down from the carriage, careful to touch only your gloved hand, and only for the briefest moment. The gardens are beautiful, filled with exotic plants from across the British Empire. As you stroll along the gravel paths, your mother deliberately slows her pace, allowing you and Mr. Blackwood to walk slightly ahead, still within sight, but with the illusion of privacy. I must say, Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood begins. You look particularly lovely today. Thank you, sir. Your spend, keeping your eyes modestly lowered. I've been meaning to ask, do you enjoy music? I myself am quite fond of the pianoforte, or probing questions about shared interests. The Victorian equivalent of what's your favorite Netflix show. I do enjoy music, your play, though I play only tolerably well. I should very much like to hear you play sometime, he says, and there's a warmth in his voice that wasn't there before. Is he actually interested? Or just going through the motions? It's impossible to tell through the thick veil of propriety that covers every interaction. This is when the fan comes into play. As you walk, you open your fan and begin to fan yourself. Slowly. According to the secret code, this indicates, I am married, which is obviously not true. But you're curious to see if Mr. Blackwood knows the language. His eyes flick to your fan, then back to your face, a slight frown creasing his brow. So, he does know the code. Interesting. You switch tactics, closing your fan and drawing it across your cheek. I love you. His eyebrows shoot up in surprise. Miss Pembroke hessies, his voice slightly strained. Are you feeling quite well? Perhaps the Sunni's too strong for you. You suppress a smile and switch signals again, this time resting the fan against your left cheek. No, now he looks thoroughly confused. Perhaps we should find some shade, he suggests, clearly trying to make sense of your contradictory messages. The thing about the language of the fan is that it was never standardized. Different etiquette books published different meanings for the same gestures. What meant I love you in Oni guide might mean leave me alone in another. It was a communication system designed for miscommunication. I once read this absolutely bonkers Victorian etiquette guide from 1870 that listed over 20 different fan signals, each with a specific meaning. The author claimed it was the secret language understood by all ladies of quality. But and I found another guide from the same year, with completely different interpretations. No wonder everyone was. As you continue walking, your mother catches up, perhaps sensing that something unusual is happening. "Ah, the orchid house," she exclaims. "Shall we?" Inside the humid glass structure, exotic orchids bloom in a riot of colors. It's beautiful, but the real attraction is a moment when your mother becomes distracted by a particularly unusual, and you find yourself momentarily alone with Mr. Blackwood behind a large palm. "Miss Pumbroker," he says quietly, "I confess I'm having trouble in signals." So, he does know the fan language. You feel a blush creeping up your neck. "I was merely cooling myself." You lie, closing your fan with a snap. Of course. He nods. But there's a twinkle in his eye that suggests he doesn't believe you for a second. "Though, if I may be so bold, if you wish to communicate with me, perhaps words would be clearer than other methods." Ish, teasing you. That seems impossibly forward for a Victorian gentleman. But before you can respond, your mother reapers, and the moment is gone. The fan wasn't the only secret communication in the Victorian dating arsenal. There was also the language of flowers, where each bloom carried a specifimus. A red rose meant love, of course. But did you know that yellow carnations meant "you have disappointed me"? Or that striped carnations meant "I cannot be with you"? As you exit the orchid house, a flower seller at the garden gate catches your eye. She's offering small posies for sale, little bunches of mixed flowers, tied with ribbon. On impulse, you pause. "Would you like one, miss?" the woman asks, holding out a particularly pretty arrangement of daisies and forget-me-nots. Before you can answer, Mr. Blackwood steps forward. "Allow me," he says, purchasing the posy and presenting it to you with a slight bow. You accept with a curtsy, aware that this small exchange is laden with meaning. A gentleman giving a lady flowers is a significant step in courtship. And these particular flowers, daisies for innocence and forget-me-nots for true love, carry their own message. Did Mr. Blackwood choose this specific posy on purpose? Does he know the language of flowers as well as the language of fans? Or was it simply the prettiest one available? How thoughtful, Mr. Blackwood, your mother approves, watching the exchange with hawk-like attention. And then, there's the handkerchief. Another seemingly innocent item, loaded with secret meaning. You've tucked one into your sleeve, as every lady does. Dropping it accidentally on purpose is a classic move to attract a gentleman's attention. As you continue your walk, you deliberately let your handkerchief slip from your sleeve to the ground. Mr. Blackwood immediately notices. "Miss Pembroke, you've dropped your handkerchief," he says, bending to retrieve it. Now comes the crucial moment. How he returns, it will indicate his interest. If he simply hands it back, he's being polite, but not particularly interested. If he presses it to his heart before returning it, he's declaring his affection. Mr. Blackwood does neither. Instead, he chucks the handkerchief into his coat pocket with a smile. "I believe it's customary for a gentleman to keep such a token, is it not? With your permission, of course." Your mother looks like she might faint from joy. This is practically a declaration of intent in Victorian terms. "Yes," you manage to say, your face burning. "You may keep it. Congratulations, you've just engaged in the Victorian equivalent of changing your Facebook status to in a relationship." Look, I'm not making this stuff up. Victorian people wrote actual guidebooks on handkerchief flirting. I found this one journal from 1867 that published a whole system called the handkerchief telegraph. It had signals like drawing it across the lips meant, "I desire your acquaintance," and letting it rest on the left cheek meant "no Willethy." Right cheek meant yes. The journal even warned that these signals should only be used at balls, parties, theaters, and on the street, but never in church, because apparently God draws the line at handkerchief flirting. By the time you return home from the gardens, you're exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the mental gymnastics required to navigate Victorian courtship rituals. Every gesture, every word, every glance has been calculated and analyzed for hidden meaning. Well, your mother demands as soon as Mr. Blackwood has taken his leave. What did you think of him? What can you say? That you spent most of the outings sending mixed signals with your fan just to see if he understood them? That you're still not sure if he chose those flowers randomly or with specific intent? That you now have one fewer handkerchief, but no better understanding of the man who might become your husband? He seems kind euphor, which is about as enthusiastic as you can honestly be. Kind, your mother exclaims. He's perfect. Did you see how he kept your handkerchief in those flowers? I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks to your father by the end of the week. That sends a jolt of panic through you. So soon? But you've had exactly 2 proper conversations with the man. Mother, surely that's too quick. We hardly know each other. She waves away your concern. Nonsense. Your father and I were engaged after 3 meetings. That's how it's done in proper society. The Victorian timetable for courtship would be alarmingly fast by modern standards. Without the luxury of casual dating or getting to know someone over time, decisions had to be made quickly, often based on very limited information. Later that evening, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your troubled expression. Was the outing not to your liking, Miss Elenina? She asks, brushing out your hair. Agnes, how can I possibly decide if Mr. Blackwood would make a good husband? I know nothing about him beyond his manners, and his fondness for the pianoforte. Agnes, sigh. That's why we have the language oftens, and flowers, and all the rest to try. To discover a person's true nature when society won't let you ask directly. But it's also confusing, you protest. It tried using the fan signals today, and I think I just confused him. Agnes can't help but laugh. The problem with secret languages, Miss Elenina, is that no Deverian reads the same dictionary. That night, as you lie in bed, you think about the day's events, the fan signals, the flowers, the handkerchief, all these elaborate methods of indirect communication developed because direct communication was forbidden. It's absurd, really. All these hoops to jump through just to say, I like you, or I don't like you. But then, isn't modern dating full of its own secret languages? The delayed text response, the social media, like the scene receipt without a reply. Maybe we haven't come as far from Victorian times as we'd like to think. The next morning brings a delivery, a small package for you, accompanied by a note. Your mother watches eagerly as you open it to find a beautiful embroidered handkerchief, with your initials in one corner. The note read simply to replace the one I claimed. Yours, H.B. Your mother is beside herself with excitement. A gift and such a personal one, my dear. This is most promising. You examine the handkerchief, turning it over in your hands. It's lovely, and the gesture is thoughtful, but what does it really tell you about Henry Blackwood as a person, as a potential husband, as someone you might spend the rest of your life with? Nothing. It tells you he has good manners, and enough money to buy fine handkerchiefs on a whim. That's it. This is the fundamental problem with Victorian dating. All style, no style. All these elaborate rituals and codes were designed to maintain propriety, but they made it nearly impossible to form genuine connections. We must send a response immediately, your mother declares. A thank you note, properly worded to show appreciation, without seeming too eager. Even your gratitude has to be carefully calibrated. And perhaps, she continues, warming to her theme, we should invite Mr. Blackwood to dinner next week. Nothing too formal, just family. It would be an appropriate next step. The steps of courtship laid out like a dance. Meet at a social event, exchange, brief conversation, a chaperoned outing, a small gift, a family dinner. Each move precisely calculated, each response carefully measured. Later that day, your younger sister Jane bounces into your room, her eyes sparkling with mischief. At 18, she's just starting her first season and finds the whole process thrillingly romantic rather than frustratingly opaque. Elenina, did Mr. Blackwood send you a handkerchief? She demands, flopping onto your bed in a most unladylike manner. He did, you confirm, showing her the delicate square of fabric. How romantic, she sigh. Do you think he'll propose soon? Jane, I've barely spacento him. We've met exactly 3 times. She shrugs. That's more than enough. Emily Harrington got engaged to Mr. Thornfield after meeting him just twice, and they say she's blissfully happy. They say, you repeat skeptically. Juan knows what goes on behind closed doors once the courting performance is over and real marriage begins. Well, I think it's terribly exciting, Jane says, and he's so handsome with those dark eyes. You could do much worse, you know. That's the bar for Victorian marriage. Could do worse. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, is it? Anyway, Jana continues, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Mary Abbott told me that her cousin taught her a secret trick with gloves. If you drop your right glove, it means you're interested. If you drop your left, it means go away. And if you drop both? You ask dryly. I didn't know. Perhaps it means you're clumsy. Jane giggles. The thing about these secret communication systems is that they kept evolving and getting more elaborate. Fans, flowers, handkerchiefs, gloves, parasols, even the way you wore your hat or arranged your hair could send signals. It was like an arms race of coded flirtation. I once found this ridiculous Victorian guide that claimed there was a language of the parasol where twirling your parasol meant, I'm engaged in carrying it closed pointed at the ground meant, I don't like you. Can you imagine trying to keep all these signals straight? No wonder there were so many miscommunications. Oh, Jane exclaims, jumping up from Thebes. I almost forgot. Mother wants you to come downstairs. She's planning the dinner menu for when Mr. Blackwood visits, and she wants your input. Translation. Mother wants to remind you which fork to use and coach you on appropriate dinner conversation topics. As you follow Jane downstairs, you can't help but wonder, what would Mr. Blackwood be like if you could just talk to him normally, without the fans and the handkerchiefs and the flowers and the constant supervision? Would you like him? Would he like the real you? In Victorian dating, you might get engaged before you ever had a chance to find out. The dinner with Mr. Blackwood is set for Friday evening. Your mother spends the entire week in a state of barely contained hysteria, ordering the cook to prepare his most impressive étis, polishing the best silver, and arranging fresh flowers. In every room, you'd think the queen herself was coming to visit, not a potential Elenina. For the last time, you must wear the blue silk, your mother insists. Rifling through your wardrobe with growing frustration, the neckline is most becoming, and Mr. Blackwood has expressed a preference for blue. The blue silk is evening wear, mother, you point out. For a family dinner, the green would be more appropriate. Your mother looks at you like you've suggested dining in your undergarments. This is not just any family dinner. This is the dinner that could determine your entire future. No pressure or anything. The day of the dinner, the entire household is in an uproar. Maids scurry about with fresh linens and polished shed silver. The cook has been up since dawn preparing a 7-course meal. Your father retreats to his study, wisely choosing to avoid the chaos until absolutely necessary. You're confined to your room to rest before the evening. Though how anyone could rest with this level of tension in the air is beyond due. Agnes brings you a cup of tea and a knowing smile. The whole house has gone mad, she remarks. Setting down the tray, Mrs. Davis in the kitchen is threatening to quit. If anyone else goes down there to check on the progress of the meal, this is ridiculous. You sigh, sipping your tea. It's just dinner. Agnes gives you a look. It's never just dinner, Miss Elenina. Not in this world. And she's right. In Victorian society, every social interaction was loaded with meaning. weighted with expectation, and governed by rules more complicated than international diplomacy. A dinner invitation to a single gentleman was practically an announcement of intent, the family sizing him up, him evaluating his potential future home. By 6 o'clock, you're dressed in the blue silk. Your mother won that battle, corseted to within an inch of your life, and your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that required 45 minutes and about 100 hairpins to achieve. You can feel at least 3 of them digging into your scalp already. Perfect, your mother. Implication being that you're lucky anyone wants you at all, especially after the advanced age of 21. In Victorian terms, you're practically on the shelf. The following days fall into a pattern: carefully chaperoned outings, public appearances together, brief conversations under watchful eyes. Mr. Blackwood calls at your home regularly, always at the appropriate hours, always subserved by your mother or another suitable chaperone. It's courtship by committee, romance by rote. Tuesday evening brings the Wilsons' musical swear, a gathering of local families to listen to amateur performances and engage in careful, controlled socialization. Mr. Blackwood arrives to escort your family, offering his arm to you for the short walk to the Wilsons' home, your parents following close behind. The Wilsons' drawing room is crowded with familiar faces, all of whom notice your entrance with Mr. Blackwood. The message is clear. A courtship is well underway, perhaps nearing its conclusion. You can feel the eyes on you, assessing, speculating, judging. Mrs. Wilson, a plump, pleasant woman with a penchant for matchmaking, beams at the sight of you with Mr. Blackwood. Elenia, my dear, and Mr. Blackwood, how lovely to see you both. Do come in. We're just about to begin the first performance. The evening progresses with a series of musical offerings of varying quality. Miss Henderson's shrill soprano, young Mr. Thompson's aggressive assault on the piano offered, Mrs. Wilson's daughter's competent but uninspired violin Through it all, Mr. Blackwood sits beside you, a respectable 6 of space between you, occasionally leaning slightly closer to whisper a comment or observation. These tiny moments of near privacy are the most intimate you've been allowed, and you find yourself looking forward to them, not because of any particular affection for Mr. Blackwood, but simply for the novelty of conversation that isn't being actively monitored by your mother. During a brief intermission, while refreshments are served, you find yourself momentarily separated from your parents in the crowd. Mr. Blackwood seizes the opportunity. "Miss Pembroke," he says quietly, "might I have a moment of your time? There is something I wish to ask you." Your heart skips a beat. Is this it? The proposal here in the Wilsons' crowded drawing room with Mrs. Henderson's off-key rendition of Mozart still ringing in your ears. "Of course," you manage to reply. He guides you toward a slightly less crowded corner of the room, still in full view of everyone, but with the illusion of privacy. He looks uncharacteristically nervous, his usual composure slightly ruffled. "Miss Elenina, if I may be so bold," he begins, his voice low. "We haven't been in company several times, and I find myself," he pauses, seeming to search for words, which is unusual for the typically articulate Mr. Blackwood. "Yes," you prompt, your own pulse quickening despite yourself. "I find myself uncertain," he finally says, which is not at all what you expected. "Uncertain," you repeat, confused. He glances around, ensuring no one is within earshot. "I have greatly enjoyed our time together, brief and supervised as it has been, but I cannot help feeling that we hardly know each other at all, that this entire process leaves little room for genuine acquaintance." You stare at him, astonished. Is Henry Blackwood, the embodiment of proper Victorian gentility, actually criticizing the very courtship system he's participating in? "I feel exactly the same way." You admit, the words tumbling out before you can stop them. It's also performative, like wary actors in a play, rather than real people. His expression softens with what looks like relief. Exactly. I have seen you play the pianoforte and walk through gardens. I have discussed the weather with you at least 24 times, but I have no idea what you actually think about anything of substance. What makes you laugh, what you dream about. This Ishak, a departure from the script that you're momentarily speechless. No one has ever acknowledged the absurdity of the system so directly, least of all, a participant in it. What are you ask, hardly daring to hope for some alternative. He sigh, running a hand through his perfectly arranged hair. Another break from proper form. I don't know. The constraints are considerable, but perhaps we could attempt something slightly more genuine, within the bounds of propriety, of course, he adds hastily. Like what? Like he purse a moment? What if I ask you a real question right now? Something beyond the weather and musical preferences. You glance nervously at the crowd, spotting your mother engaged in conversation with Mrs. Wilson, temporarily distracted. All right. What makes you happy, Helena Pembroke? Truly happy? The question catches you off guard with its simplicity and directness. When was the last time anyone asked you that? Has anyone ever asked you that? Oh, reading. You answer honestly. Not just novels, though I do enjoy those scientific journals, botanical studies, history, learning about the world beyond these drawing rooms and garden parties. And you? What makes Henry Blackwood happy? He looks surprised and pleased, at the question being turned back on him. Solitude, he admits. Not always. I enjoy good company, but there's something about being alone with one's thoughts, free from the constant performance associate demands. I spend hours in my study, reading or simply thinking. Mimither finds it most concerning, he adds with a small smile. This tiny exchange, this moment of genuine connection, feels more significant than all the formal interactions that preceded it. For the first time, you glimpse the real person behind the proper Victorian gentleman facade, and you find you rather like what you see. The moment is broken by your mother's voice. Elianina, Mr. and Blackwood. You must come hear Miss Wilson's rendition of Beethoven. She's about to begin. Reality reasserts it. The brief window of authenticity closes as quickly as it opened, and you both resume your prescribed roles. The proper young lady and her attentive tutor, maintaining appropriate distance, exchanging appropriate pleasantries, performing the courtship dance exactly as choreographed. But something has changed. As you take your seat for Miss Wilson's performance, you catch Mr. Blackwood's eye, and there's a new understanding between you. A shared recognition of the absurdity of it all, and perhaps a tentative alliance in your attempt to find something real within the artificial constraints of Victorian courtship. As mis uso massacris. Beethoven with enthusiastic incompetence, you find yourself wondering, is it possible to actually get to know someone, to build a genuine connection within a system designed to prevent exactly that? Or are you and Mr. Blackwood doomed to make life-altering decisions based on the flimsiest acquaintance, like everyone else? The most frustrating part of Victorian courtship wasn't just the restrictions themselves, but the fact that everyone knew they were ridiculous, yet continued to enforce them anyway. It was collective madness. Everyone playing along with rules they knew were absurd, because the social consequences of breaking them were too severe. As the evening draws to a close and you prepare to leave, Mr. Blackwood helps you with your shawl, his fingers briefly brushing against your shoulder. The most intimate contact you've had, and entirely accidental. Even that tiny touch sends ogled through you. Not necessarily from attraction, but from the sheer novelty of physical contact with someone who ain't your maid or your mother. Miss Pembroke, he says formally as your parents approach. Thank you for a most enjoyable evening. The pleasure was mine, Mr. Blackwood. You respond, equally formal. But your eyes meet, and there's that flash of understanding again. The recognition that you're both playing parts in this elaborate social performance. But perhaps, just perhaps, there might be a way to find something genuine beneath the artifice. As your family walks home, your mother chats excitedly about how attentive Mr. Blackwood was, how impressed everyone seemed by the match, how fortunate you were to have attracted such an eligible suitor. Your father nods along, occasionally offering a comment or observation. Neither of them asks what you think or how you feel. That's not part of this script. Later, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your distracted expression. Something happened this evening, she observes shrewdly with Mr. Blackwood. Is it that obvious? You hesitate, then decide to confide in her. Agnes has been your confidant since childhood, the one person with whom you can be honest. Has said something unexpected about how ridiculous it is that we're expected to make such important decisions, based on such limited acquaintance, about wanting to know the real me, not just the version society demands. Agnes raises an eyebrow that's unusual and refreshing, I might add. So the perfect Mr. Blackwood has thoughts of his own, beyond proper etiquette and suitable matches. Interesting. It was just a moment, you sigh. Then Mother interrupted, and we went back to discussing the weather and pretending Miss Wilson's playing wasn't making the dog howl. Agnes chuckles as she brushes out your hair. Still, it's something. A crack in the perfect gentleman facade. I wonder what else might be behind it. So do you. That night, as you lie in bed, you find yourself actually looking forward to your next encounter with Mr. Blackwood, curious to see if that moment of authenticity was a one-time aberration, or the beginning of something more genuine. The courtship, its prescribed path over the next weeks, more chaperoned outings, more public appearances, more carefully observed interactions. But now, there's a pronounces, circling you like a general inspecting troops before battle. Remember, speak when spoken to, laugh at his jokes, but not too loudly. And for heaven's sake, don't talk about those dreadful novels you insist on reading. Heaven forbid. You reveal that you have actual thoughts and interests. Mr. Blackwood arrives at exactly 7 o'clock, dressed impeccably in evening attire, bearing a small bouquet for your mother and a single perfect rose for you. A gesture that makes your mother practically vibrate with delight, and your father raise an eyebrow in subtle amusement. I read through dozens of Victorian etiquette books for this history, and good Lord, the rules for dinner parties were wild. There were specific protocols for everything. Haunters, the dining room, in what order, how far apart chairs should be placed, how to hold each utensil for different courses. I found this one guide from 1876 that had an entire chapter just on the proper way to eat soup. Spoiler alert, if they hear you slurping, you failed at life. Dinner is a carefully choreographed performance. Your father leads your mother into the dining room, followed by Mr. Blackwood escorting you. The seating arrangement is strategic, Mr. Blackwood beside you, but with your mother directly across to monitor every interaction. The conversation is just as choreographed, safe topics only, though weather pleasant for the season. The latest performance at the theater, Mr. Blackwood found it diverting. Mutual acquaintance, all in good health. Thank you for asking. Nothing personal, nothing controversial, nothing that might reveal actual personality or character. It's like watching actors recite lines from a particularly boring play. Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood says during a lull between courses, your mother tells me you're an accomplished pianist. I'd be honored to hear you play after dinner. And there it is. Thief to dinner performance, another staple of Victorian courtship. Young ladies were expected to display their accomplishments, usually music, singing, or perhaps reciting poetry, like circus animals performing tricks. See how cultured and refined your future wife is. Marvel at her decorative talents. I would be delighted. You respond automatically, though the thought makes your palms sweat. You're a mediocre pianist at best, having practiced only because it was expected, not from any real passion or talent. After dinner, the real test begins. According to Victorian custom, The ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. This brief separation gives your mother the opportunity to grill you on your impressions, while simultaneously offering Mr. Blackwood and your father privacy to discuss more serious matters, like your dowry and marriage prospects. He is most attentive. Your mother whispers excitedly in the drawing room. And did you see how he looked at you during the fish course? Most promising. You're not sure what a promising look during the fish course entails, but you nod anyway. When the gentlemen finally join you, your father's expression is inscrutable, but there's a certain satisfaction in his manner that Makisu's stomach tighten. Some agreement has been reached, some understanding established. Now comes your performance. You take your place at the pianoforte, acutely aware of everyone watching. Your fingers tremble slightly as you begin to play a simple Mozart piece, difficult enough to show skill, but not so challenging that you're likely to make embarrassing mistakes. Mr. Blackwood stands beside the instrument, turning pages for you. Another ritualized interaction that allows a moment of proximity without you're intensely aware of his presence. The slight scent of tobacco from the after-dinner cigars, the careful way he watches for your nod to turn the page. When you finish playing, there's polite applause and appropriate compliments regardless of the actual quality of your performance. That's not really the point. The point is that you've demonstrated your suitability as a cultured wife who can entertain guests. The evening continues with conversation in the drawing room. Tea served at precisely the right time, and Mr. Blackwood taking his leave at a respectable hour. Not too early to suggest disinterest, not too late to suggest impropriety at the door. He bows over your hand, his lips not quite touching your gloved fingers, the closest thing to physical contact permitted in this elaborate worship dance. Miss Pembroke, thank you for a most enjoyable evening, Hesses, his eyes meeting yours briefly. Might I have the honor of escorting you and your family to church on Sunday? Church attendance, the most respectable of all courtship activities. In Victorian society, being seen together at church was practically an announcement of serious intentions. Your Mador, hovering nearby, practically glows with approval. We would be delighted. Your father answers for you, clapping Mr. Blackwood on the shoulder in a rare display of warmth. Once he's gone, your parents exchange meatnifa looks. Well, your mother demands, what did he say to you, Edward? Your father cleared his throat. Nothing definite yet, but he expressed his admiration for Lenina and his hope to become better acquainted with our family. I believe his intentions are serious. They discuss you as if you're not standing right there, as if your opinion on this man who might become your husband is irrelevant, because in many ways it is. The decision will ultimately be made by your father based on factors like Mr. Blackwood's financial prospects, family connections, and reputation, not on whether you actually like him or could imagine spending your life with him. Later, in the privacy of your bedroom, Agnes helps you out of the elaborate dinner dress and corset. Oh, Sue, take your first deep breath in hours. She looks at you curiously. Well, Miss Elalina, what did you think of Mr. Blackwood this evening? That's the question, isn't it? What do you think, Opheme? You've now spent perhaps a total of 5 hours in his company, all under strict supervision, engaging only in the most superficial conversation. Do you know him any better than you did before? Can you make a life-filtering decision based on this limited information? He seems pleasant, you offer, which makes Agnes roll her eyes. Pleasant, she repeats. High praise, indeed. What would you have? Me say, Agnes. That I am madly in love after 5 hours of talking about the weather and listening to him compliment my mediocre piano playing. Agnes sighs as she brushes out your hair. No, miss, but perhaps you could look for smaller signs of character. Did he speak kindly to the servants? Did he listen when you spoke, or merely wait for his turn to talk? Was he patient when your mother told that interminable story about Lady Harrington's garden party? These are surprisingly insightful questions, and you consider them carefully. Mr. Blackwood had indeed thanked the footman who took his hat. He had appeared to listen attentively when you briefly mentioned your interest in botany after the garden visit, and he had smiled politely through your mother's lengthy anecdote without showing a trace of impatience. Small things perhaps, but in a courtship system that reveals so little, perhaps small things are all you have to go on. The next test in this elaborate courtship ritual comes on Sunday. Church attendance was a non-negotiable part of Victorian life, but who you sat with and walked with to and from services sent clear social signals about relationships and intentions. When Mr. Blackwood meets your family outside the church, heads turn. The message is clear to everyone. A courtship is officially underway. You can practically hear the gossip starting as you walk down the aisle to your family's pew, Mr. Blackwood at your side. I actually went to this amazing museum exhibit about Victorian church customs once. They had this whole section on how church was basically a matchmaking hotspot. After the service, young men would wait outside to escort young women home, and who walked with whom was this whole public declaration of intent. Church wasn't just about religion. It was about putting yourself on display in your Sunday best, and scoping out potential partners in a parent-approved setting. After vis-a-vis, Mr. Blackwood joins your family for Sunday luncheon, another significant step in the courtship progression. The meal is less formal than Friday's dinner, but no less laden with meaning. Mr. Blackwood has now been invited into your home twice in 1 week, a clear indication that your parents approve of his suit. I was thinking, your mother says as the meal concludes, that perhaps we might all attend the Wilsons' musical evening on Tuesday. They specifically mentioned hoping to see you there, Ella Lenina, and I'm sure they would be delighted if Mr. Blackwood accompanied us. Another public appearance together. The courtship is accelerating. That sounds delightful, Mr. Black. If Miss Pembroke is amenable, of course. All eyes turn to you, though your agreement is assumed. To decline would be a public rejection, an embarrassment to both Mr. Blackwood and your family. I look forward to it, you say. The expected response. After Mr. Blackwood takes his leave, your mother corners you in the drawing room, her expression serious. Ellie, I hope you understand how fortunate you are. Mr. Blackwood is everything we could hope for in a match for you. Well-connected, financially secure, and of impeccable reputation. Your father and I are most pleased with his attentions. Translation: don't mess this up. Yes, mother, you reply. Because what else can you say? She pats your hand. I was worried, you know, after your first season yielded no suitable offers. But Mr. Blackwood is actually a far better match than any of last year's prospects. Sometimes patience is rewarded. The subtle undercurrent, a secret understanding between you and Mr. Blackwood. You've become conspirators afterwards, finding brief moments to exchange real thoughts and feelings within the strict confines of Victorian propriety. As your courtship with Mr. Blackwood progresses, the whispers grow louder. The servants exchange meaningful glances. He calls your mother has taken to casually mentioning wedding customs in everyday conversation. Even your father, usually absorbed in his business affairs, has begun to take a more active interest in your social calendar. Everyone is waiting for the proposal. Everyone except you. Agnes, you ask one evening as she brushes out your hair, how did you know you wanted to marry Thomas? Agnes and the footman Thomas have been quietly hanged for nearly a year, saving for a small cottage where they can live after their marriage. It's a love match, Rerine, a world where practicality usually trumps affection. Agnes's hands pause briefly. I just knew, miss, when I'm with him, I feel more myself, not less, and the thought of waking up next to him for the next 50 years makes me happy, not anxious. You consider this. When you think about waking up next to Henry Blackwood for the next 50 years, you feel what? Not dread certainly, but not quiet joy that lights Agnes's face when she speaks of Thomas. But how can anyone know for sure? You press, especially when we're never allowed to be ourselves during courtship. Agnes resumes, brushing, her expression thoughtful. That's the gamble, isn't it? You gather what clues you can, and then you leap, hoping there's something solid on the other side. A gamble, indeed. A leap of faith with your entire future at stake. Then next day brings another step in the courtship dance. Your father announces at breakfast that Mr. Blackwood has requested a private meeting with him in his study that afternoon. Your mother nearly drops her teacup in excitement. Today, oh Elalina, we must make sure you look your best. The blue dress, I think, and perhaps the pearl earrings that were your grandmother's. Mother, you say carefully. We don't know why Mr. Blackwood wishes to speak with father. She gives you a look that clearly communicates you're being deliberately obtuse. Don't be ridiculous, Elalina. A gentleman doesn't request a private meeting with a young lady's father to discuss the weather. She's right, of course. There's only one reason for such a meeting. Mr. Blackwood intends to ask your father's permission to propose marriage to you. Not your permission, mind you, your father's. Because in Victorian England, a woman was essentially transferred from one man's authority to another's. Your consent was assumed if your father approved the match. Your feelings on the matter were secondary at best, irrelevant at worst. I found this absolutely wild excerpt from a Victorian marriage manual that said, the consent of the father should always be obtained before a young man pays his addresses to the daughter. For a young man's character is very much in the father's power, like the actual young woman's opinion, not Evan mentioned. The household is thrown into a flurry of activity. You're banished to your room to rest, while your mother supervises the preparation of refreshments for the all-important meeting. Your father to his study, to await Mr. Blackwood's arrival. His expression a mixture of satisfaction and the slight discomfort of a man about to engage in an emotional discussion. Agnes helps you change into the blue dress. Her movements efficient, but gentle. Nervous, Miss Elanina. Terrified, you admit. What if father says yes? Agnes gives you a quizzical look. Isn't that what we're hoping for? Is it? You're not even sure anymore. In the beginning, marriage to Mr. Blackwood seemed like a sentence to be endured. Then, as you glimpsed their ideal person behind the proper facade, it began to seem more appealing. But now, faced with the reality of it, you're seized by doubt. What if we're making a terrible mistake? What if those few moments of genuine connection aren't enough? What if we marry and discover we're completely incompatible? Agnes sighs, adjusting your necklace. Those are questions every bride asks, Miss, but most don't have the luxury of asking them until after the wedding. At precisely 3 o'clock, Mr. Blackwood arrives. From your window, you watch him approach house, impeccably dressed, as always. His posture straight, his stride he disappears inside, and you're left to wait. The waiting is excruciating. You pace your room, unable to concentrate on reading or needlework. What are they discussing down there? Your dowry, certainly your accomplishments as a potential wife, your family connections. But is anyone considering your happiness, your compatibility, your future together as sexual human beings, rather than as social and economic units entering a contractual arrangement? After what feels like an eternity, but is probably less than an hour, there's a knock at your door. It's your mother, her face flushed with excitement. Elalina, come downstairs at once. Your father and Mr. Blackwood wish to speak with you in the drawing room. This is it. The moment the entire courtship has been building toward. You follow your mother downstairs, your heart pounding so loudly you're sure Veriani can hear it. In the drawing room, your father and Mr. Blackwood stand as you enter. Your father looks pleased. Mr. Blackwood, nervous but determined. Elalina, your father begins. Mr. Blackwood has something huish to ask you. He and your mother exchange a look, then discreetly withdraw, leaving you alone with Mr. Blackwood. The first time you've ever been permitted such privacy. Of course, they're just outside the open door, within earshot, and ready to intervene if needed. but it's still a monumental concession to the importance of the moment. Mr. Blackwood takes a step forward, then hesitates. For a man normally so composed, he appears trackless, uncertain. Miss Pembroke, Elenina, he begins, then stops, clearing his throat. I find myself at a disadvantage, despite our weeks of acquaintance. I feel I hardly know how to speak to you without an audience of chaperones. You can't help but smile at this acknowledgement of the absurdity of your situation. It is rather strange, isn't it, to be suddenly granted privacy at this most crucial moment, when we've been denied it throughout our entire acquaintance? He returns your smile, seeming to relax lightly. Indeed, though I suppose it follows the pattern of our peculiar courtship, everything backward and constrained. There's a pause, both of you acutely aware of your parents hovering just outside, listening to every word. I have spoken with your father, Mr. Blackwood continues, his voice more formal now, and he has granted me permission to ask for your hand in marriage. Even though you knew it was coming, the words still land with the weight of unveils. This is real. This is happening. Before I make my formal proposal, however, he says, lowering his voice slightly, I wanted to ask you something else. Something outside the usual script. You look at him surprised. Yes, are you certain about me? About this? I know we've had precious few opportunities for genuine conversation, for true knowledge of each other. I find myself drawn to you, intrigued by the glimpses of your mind and character I've been permitted to see, but I can't help wondering if it's enough for either of us. The question takes your breath away. In all your imagined scenarios of you never expected him to express the very doubts that have been plaguing you. I've been asking myself same thing, you admit quietly. We've had so little chance to truly know each other. He nods, looking relieved at your honesty. I've been corresponding with a cousin who married an American, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Now, she tells me that in America, couples are often permitted courtship walks alone together. No chaperones, just the two people getting to know each other. Can you imagine such freedom? You try to picture it, walking with Mr. Blackwood, just the two of you, able to speak freely without constant supervision. It seems both thrilling and terrifying. It sounds scandalous, you reply, with a small smile, and wonderful, indeed. He takes a deep breath. I cannot offer you such freedom, not in our society, but I can offer you honesty, and my promise to always seek the real Nina beneath the proper Miss Pembroke everyone else sees, if you'll grant me the same courtesy to see their Al Henry, not just Mr. Blackwood the suitable match. It's not a tradition. There's no flowery declaration of love, no going down on one knee. Instead, it's something rarer and perhaps more valuable. An acknowledgement of your situation, an compromise to make the best of it together. I believe I would like that very much, you say softly. He smiles, then remembers himself and assumes a more proper stance, raising his voice lightly. For the benefit of your listening parents, he asks formally, Miss Pembroke, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? And there it is. The question that will determine the course of your entire future, asked by a man you're still getting to know, in a ritual choreographed by society, rather than new and feeling. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, you reply, equally formal. I would be honored to accept your proposal. There's a barely suppressed squeal from the hallway, and your parents reappear, beaming with satisfaction. Your mother is already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, your father looking as pleased as you've ever seen him.